It's a windy, beautiful day on the island of Maui. Welcome to another class. This is your design methods, developing your design methods. And as you can see, most of us have the intelligence of looking at a space and seeing what's the best way to cultivate it. Sometimes you're cultivating energy. And so there's a lot of consistent wind here. We're going to put up some windmills, right? Make hay while the sun shines, you could say. But yeah, catching and storing energy is an essential aspect of the principles of design, and looking at all the design methods and taking your time one step at a time, and you'll see you'll be an excellent designer in no time. So yes, the convenience and the ease is important in the design, and then the tightness of the design to where it's little maintenance once it's established and maximize productivity will give you an example of permaculture. People will come in and say, yes, we're doing permaculture, there it is. And they say, wow, that's amazing. Yes, and we're expanding it throughout our entire place. Because we took our time, we thought it out well, we prepared the space, we've implemented it, and here it is. And it's going well. And you can do this over and over and over again. Start small. Don't think like, oh, okay, we have to do a whole place. Find one corner, edge, and establish it fully, and then move from that edge and it's expanded until eventually the whole place is done. And then you have maintenance, of course, it doesn't go away, but the quantity and the amount and the method and the way changes dramatically. Yeah, look at this. We got the perfect place for what? A hammock. To do what? Design and recline. When you're designing, you're considering spacing when planting trees. Well, look at the spacing here. We got 3 coconut trees residing within maybe a radius of 4 feet, and they are looking well, thriving with coconuts. So let's design and recline in this kind of way and maximize the potential of the space. Yes.
This berm right here is a spiral berm. So if you had your drone out, you could do a picture from the top. Yep. And it looks like a labyrinth. It goes like this. You can walk all the way up and down, and kids get on this all the time. But what it is that we have a building here and a building here, and they're both kind of outdoor buildings, more greenhouse style. So the noise can travel, right? And we have a lot of rock on the ground, the noise travels. So what this is a permaculture design that is not only for beauty with sacred geometry, but it also blocks all the sound from the building. So if you're in that building, you can talk and you don't hear it over there so much, right?
This is a guild of trees, 3 different types of citrus, and they're pruned and managed to be able to take up the space but still bring in light, bring in air, right? Because they get a lot of rain here. You can see, look at the amount of moss on the branches here. And sometimes moss is a great sign, especially these kind of moss here. It's showing that the air quality is good. You won't normally see this kind of moss growing without good air quality. And yeah, they have a ground cover of perennial peanut, some interlayering of herbaceous layers, bringing in color, bringing in distractions for pests that may occur and arise. I see a vining layer of the passion fruit vine coming into this and crawling over into another tree of the passion vine. They call it here lilikoi. You know, the feeling is like that it's getting to a point where the management of it is very minimal. Maybe they'll hedge out some of the colorful plants here to create a certain feel of it. But it's quite nice. And the yield is fruit, the yield is beauty, ambiance. Yeah, a feeling of being taken care of. And we can all do this, you know. It's about learning about the plants, learning about what space they need, how you want to manage it, how much time effort you want to put into it, what kind of yields you want to get out of it. In what ways can you work with the kind of soil that you have, as well as the kind of infiltration of various fungal, bacterial, or insect-based problems, so to speak, to balance out and to regenerate the kind of food needs and other needs that you require. You see how they're trying to do that, where they put down an edge of wood, they put some cardboard down, they put some mulch on top, they planted some plants like lemongrass, ginger, and they put a ground cover of perennial peanuts, right? And you can see it's just starting to get itself going. When you do these designs, always consider to what capacity will this function when it is done partly or done fully. So if you have this hanging out on the outside, you could actually produce more of a drying effect, right? Where the sun hits this and it actually pulls or wicks the moisture out. If you have this set up in such a way where it's fully covered, it will not do that. And so always consider good design and the little mini things like this that will create a big difference as far as how it functions and how it functions well. How much mulch is here? It's very, very little actually. And so that's why you have this out and exposed, and not necessarily giving the benefit that you may want. And you can see here the grasses here popping out in between because there's no actual edge of these grasses coming in and being able to be infiltrated through. So not just design, but design well. And then you'll start seeing some of your benefits of the design. Okay. You have relationships, and there are many, but the ones that I like to focus on are just three. You have symbiotic, spatial, and beneficial relationships. Symbiotic relationships are ones like the ones you find with nitrogen-fixing plants. But there's also the symbiosis of us as human beings consuming a fruit. We have a relationship in which we are giving and receiving, where we consume something and then our defecation is a nutrient back to the plant. This is a form of symbiosis. There's symbiosis in certain mycorrhizal fungal relationships in the root zones or within trees. There's a symbiosis as far as how other animals are evolved and working with your plants. You know, like this lovely turkey in here. You came to say hi? Huh? To get on TV? Get famous? Get on the video. A lot of these guys. Right? And they're just walking wild. We have all the ducks over here as well. And so most of their trees are fairly established, so they're able to integrate some pheasants into the space that are going around and doing their magic, right? They're picking and eating up grubs and maintaining a balance that maybe you can see, maybe you can't see. Maybe there's enough, maybe there's not enough. You know, this is really more of the there's the easiness of saying, hey, let's put some chickens in, let's put some ducks in, let's plant some fruit trees and put in some understory. And then there's the criteria to say, all right, now we have this going, how is it done in such a way that it is well establishing the function of how that design is coming through. And so I personally would look at how many chickens per square feet do I need to maintain the kind of growth that is happening within the space, or the kind of amount of bugs that we're seeing based on the development of the trees and the plants. This is a bit more intricate. However, you can do it, and you can do it through sheer principle number one, observation. Observe, interact, see how well they're getting in and working with the mulch and working with the spaces that you have around here. Is this mulch having a double effect, or are they just dropping it in one place? Can I give it another function to it? Maybe I'll drop it underneath a tree so they scratch and do their thing under a tree. What ways can you integrate more? What ways can you allow for nature to take more of its course? How many steps can you take out of your process by which you're taking care of the animals, or taking care of your plants, or taking care of your roadways? You know, in what way can it be a functional part of the design where the access, the animals, the edge of the forest that is here, how are they all a means by which you are establishing your place for more sustenance and less maintenance? And when you see a well-designed, established space, you're going to experience that in action. You're going to see less people out there maintaining, more people enjoying their life. And that's what I want for you. When you become a designer, right away you should be able to see more and more what's happening on the land and how is it of benefit and how is it of development for sustainability, how is it of maintenance, which people look and say, oh, okay, I can see how this reduces maintenance or increases maintenance, how this makes me dependent on fossil fuel based systems like weed whacking or mowing, or how it is established so well to so many defining edges that it minimizes the maintenance needs. And so the more you're able to see that, the more you'll be able to create good design from the onset. And so inside of here, as you go into a space, when you kind of determine, okay, this is the area that we want to plant, I'm going to look for right away, okay, how am I developing the successional phases of it as it grows into maturity? How is it blooming into either canopy or open space, depending on what I want in my design? And what is the species of plants that will establish faster or more fuller than the invasive plants or the weedy species that I may not want to have to work with as much, which causes more maintenance for me, right? And establish more sustenance. Hey, just go to some place next to you, see what food they're growing, see how it's growing, see what's growing well in the shade, what's growing in the sun. It's not like you have to make it difficult for yourself. Just find out what does well, and when you do it well, boom, you made it easy for you. Permaculture made easy is when you really take care in how you're developing your designs. And when you do that from the onset, it makes a significant difference in the long term as you're maintaining it, right?
To get the trees to grow laterally and sideways rather than up. And you can see how dense these trees are. This is just put in to show how this thing is used and pinned on.
Okay.
But this was just a dead branch, so it's the tree is trained to grow sideways, and then you take away all this energy going up. So it's
like an espalier is what I understand
exactly,
it says. Yeah.
Exactly. And it makes it extremely easy to harvest for one thing later on, keeping people off of ladders, making it really simple. And the density, from what I understand, of fruit on this trellis is going to be mind-boggling, where even though we have lots of trees in a dense small space, a lot more than we would have normally, the production value out of these trees is going to be more than the trees in the regular spaced orchard.
Normally you would have how many trees in this kind of space? 4?
Oh gosh, 4 or 6 at the most. I think the spacing out here is 25 across and 30 down the line.
And then here we have, looks like 4.
I think we have 16 on both sides, so I think we have 32 trees.
Wow.
5 feet apart. This again is just a dead branch to demonstrate. And we had lots of people here, and on the whole convention, this was probably the most interesting concept to everybody. You know, that this could be a possibility, that you can grow massive amounts of fruit in a very small space.
Very small space.
Because everybody doesn't have 1,000 acres, you know, and I would just as soon do it in a small space where, you know, I come in here and walk down the middle of this row and it's just fruit. It's just laden with fruit like a grapevine.
Right.
And that's the idea.
Right.
And the highest point of this whole deal will be at arm's distance.
Wow.
That's the idea. I think that, you know, it's going to take us 4 or 5 years to get there, but this is a test site that is dedicated to this natural farming technique, and we invite everybody to come in and check it out. It's not just for us, it's for everybody. And this space going down this line is dedicated to possibly expanding it or doing other things like the pollinator habitat. But other varieties also are utilizing this technique. Durian, breadfruit, any kind of fruit.
Really?
Even citrus.
Because I'm always thinking these trees as being huge trees.
Exactly.
Massive.
And that's the idea. We're trying to get away from that. Lychee tree, huge tree.
Right.
The ones in the conventional orchard, you know, we trim them, but they're still big.
Right.
We still got to get on ladders or use some kind of equipment to get to the fruit, or drastically trim them back to get to the fruit. But in this case, the idea is it's all on the ground. It's all dense. It's all going to be very easy and bountiful.
Yeah.
Even just right here next to the cannabis garden, it's kind of a little spice zone. So we've got nutmeg, which is a slow growing spice. We have cinnamon. We've got a fig mixed in there. We've got our red hot peppers, Tabasco, also called Hawaiian chilies, cherimoya, more cinnamon on the back, all adjacent to compost area, adjacent to cannabis, adjacent to our chicken pens. So in many ways, you see that kind of edge effect that we so often talk about in permaculture. So I can harvest from the chickens. I use the excess soil and turn over soil from the compost into the cannabis beds, and then vice versa, all while feeding these nice spice trees along the way. You know, dairy's always had high value, and so we made a lot of cheeses and yogurts, and those were very easily tradable. However, you're always evaluating how much work goes in, and so that milking every day is a dedication. That's one of the things also with having the year-round growing season and not having that break, to not be able to step away to go on a vacation or to go meet family or to, you know, hooey up and have a weekend of intensive permaculture work, whatever it is. With animals, it's hard to walk away. So it's another dimension of design that you really have to incorporate, which is why community has become so important for us.
So when you're creating your design methods, you want to consider quite a bit the simplicity of what are other people doing in your area, what is working well, or what are other people doing in the same kind of bioregion that you have, that you're in, whether it's tropical, subtropical, temperate, desert. Take a look around, listen what you can find, and see what works, and then start with that. So he started to work on, Josh, one of the owners here, he started to work on what works for him, and what he designed was a space that has mostly, as we are now, what we're seeing is like a papaya skill, because he makes good money on the papayas, as well as he's intermixing some coffee and also avocado. Both of these are his kind of like cash crop. And then he's interplanting plants that they normally eat, right? So they have some perennial vegetables like the hibiscus here. They have some peppers in there for a deterrent for certain pests. They have herbs like lavender for, again, different smells and different attractive patterns. And this is causing a polyculture of all kinds of different outputs, right? And so you can see most of the ground cover here is mint, actually, which is quite nice, and perennial peanut. And so rather than coming in here and like mowing and having to do so much weeding, they've established the ground instead, and then they come in and do mostly harvesting. And because it's such a nice thick ground cover, if these ever drop, they drop on a soft landing, and they're able to see them easier. They're able to harvest better. And we got plenty of food, which is great. As the coffees, and here's a soursop right here, and the avocados grow up, of course this will be shaded out, and they'll have another set of inputs to harvest on, which are the avocados and the understory of the soursop and the other, and of course they'll keep living out. And what he says is he will actually chop back after say 10 years or so the entire thing, including the avocados and the coffees, right to the ground as a stump. They can be cut down to the ground and they'll come right back. And in the meantime, grow more papayas, grow more corn. I think he starts with corn actually. And so this is his method to design. He's doing well with it. He's getting a lot of growth out of it. It looks beautiful, and he's living a life. All right, stage one, we have lovely lettuce and basil and beets and daikon radishes and all kinds of yumminess, right? From that space, you're cultivating the land, you're growing lots of greens, and you're wanting to improve it. So we move into stage two, which are, now we have beautiful papayas, and we have the beginning stages of some, you don't see them from here, but there's some coffee. Oh, here's a lovely plant here of mulberry and soursop. And then we have a next stage here. This is now moving from beginning to year one. Here's a few years in where you have the papayas are a bit higher, still harvesting papayas. You have the coffee beans now starting to produce. And we move to this side, where it's like just a couple more years ahead. We have full mature coffee beans growing underneath the papayas. You have, wow, I see a bunch of lilikoi patches still growing. And you have some bigger trees in the back there which will become the mature canopy of the space. A design method that is necessary for you to understand is how the plants will be growing, right? So what is the successional phases? Here, he has a strategy of succession based on the kind of farming he wants to do and, of course, the profitability of that farm. And so we have on that side, he started with corn and now he's doing some vegetables. Of course, you always want to begin with your foundation, the soil, and he has sufficient amounts to be able to grow all of his corn and the vegetables and stuff, and then in between that he's beginning with some small papaya trees. He uses a hermaphrodite variety so that he gets quite good consistency with the quality of the papayas, which are excellent for selling. And as they come in, here's a year one that you're seeing here, that he moved from the corn and the herbs and the vegetables to actually mostly papayas. In between the rows he planted the perennial peanuts, and that took over. There's tons of mints as well that were like a volunteer, but hey, they're working as a ground cover. And so they can come through here very easily and harvest. This is, on this side, you're seeing a 3-year development where you have now the coffee and the avocado and other trees growing in. The papayas are quite high, plenty of sunlight for them to grow in. And they're still harvesting papayas, and now they're harvesting the coffee. In between you have more of a polyculture of different kinds of spices. So there's lots of cardamom and allspice, and there's nutmeg inside here. Again, you have the papayas. They're quite tall now after a few years, and there's even some native plants in here. He's chopping and dropping back to provide for the nutrient of the soil. So as you can see, this is quite a successful system and doing quite well. It's all grown organically. Most of the material, like you see here, is from off of the land, and it's being cycled back into the land. They have that system where they're closing the loop in their own means as far as food, and closing the loop as far as their financial means, so they can keep perpetuating these systems. It's a windy, beautiful day on the island of Maui. Welcome to another class. This is your design methods, developing design methods. And as you can see, most of us have the intelligence of looking at a space and seeing what's the best way to cultivate it. Sometimes you're cultivating energy. And so there's a lot of consistent wind here. We're going to put up some windmills, right? Make hay while the sun shines, you could say. But yeah, catching and storing energy is an essential aspect of the principles of design. And looking at all the design methods and taking your time, one step at a time, and you'll see, you'll be an excellent designer in no time.
So like many things have multiple uses, and that's what we're looking for. Insect habitat, mulching, shade, cooling the soil, building soil fertility by chop and drop, all that kind of stuff. So that's, one thing. And then broadscape, what we've done
is that we can grow as much food in the wintertime as we can in the summertime. It's just really different food. So in the winter, now we're doing much more of the brassicas, the cabbages, the broccolis, the kales, the collards, the various onions and leeks and salad greens and plants like that. Whereas in the summer, it's much more the typical corn, beans, squash, tomato, peppers, eggplants, that kind of stuff. And so we have very distinct seasons with very distinct cropping periods, and there's no rest for gardeners in coastal California. They don't get to sit around the fire while it's snowy and dormant outside and read seed catalogs like some other lucky gardeners back east get to do. So things are busy around here, although we're certainly in a dormant moment, such as the peaches that have de-leaved, although I see that the apples still have leaves. And then we have kiwis, which are ripe right now, and now's the time to pick kiwis. So we look at the food forests and look at the fact that we have different fruit for every month of the year, and right now we're at the end of the pineapple guava season and right in the middle of the fuzzy kiwi season as well. regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming, in this case in an intensive system on a small scale. This is our Zone 1 intensive garden, if you will, the annual production that we then surround by our Zone 2 and Zone 3 more woody and perennial systems. So there's the zonation effect, and permaculture design is well applied here at OAC. This is a salad mix bed. It's what we call a cut and come again bed. And you can see here we have arugula, here's mizuna, this is going to be a type of a purple mustard. So this bed was just hand sown. It's coming up very dense, and then eventually once it gets thick enough, then you can come along with scissors and cut your mesclun salad mix bed. And we use different types of plants and different patterns. We sometimes spell words with the plants and use the different foliage and the different colors to create an artistic bed that's really fun to harvest from, and obviously super tasty with all the various edible greens for the salad mix. There's an emergent relationship based on holistic design, and how we educate and demonstrate on that and practice what we preach, if we're going to get up on a soapbox, is fundamental here, and people can come and look and eat and taste and swim in. Like we're 100% of our summer irrigation on the farm is a winter rainwater harvesting pond that's sited high on the landscape and is a gravity-based system. So we do all rainwater harvesting for all agricultural irrigation on site, which you can also go swim in or fish in or observe the native turtles enjoying it as a habitat. So stacking functions in water, earth, air, fire, and life. How do we create conditions conducive for community that's convivial? Idea of zonation, where it's really about frequency of visitation and intensivity of management, and the further away you get, the less frequently you're visiting and the less intensively you manage it. That's the premise of permaculture zones.